Hello, for my vlog 6, I'm going to be analyzing Sapphire's Push, and I am going to be analyzing this through a racial feminist lens. So, upon beginning to analyze this text, I started pointing out what things stood out to me the most, and they were stuff like the fact that Precious got all the way to 11th grade and she still was illiterate, the relationship with Precious and her father and also her mother, the way she uses the text in the book and the way that the text looks. And then mainly what I really wanted to focus on is the poverty and the characters that portray poverty and the races within the book. So they have races such characters of races like Precious, Rhea, Miss Rain, and other characters, and so I started questioning, like, how are these people portrayed? How are their races portrayed? Are there white people in the book? How are they portrayed? The only time I remember them using or talking about white women usually in when their Precious is kind of mad at them, or calling them a cracker, or that one time when Precious was in the AIDS support group, I remember her saying, oh, white women have AIDS and they've been raped too, and she was just very astonished by this. So I wanted to look into like how these different races are shown throughout the book, and I ended up writing a list of all the different girls and all the different identities of these women, and I came to the realization that there was about 6 or 7 women, 7 including the mother, Precious's mother, in the book, and there was only 2 men characters in the book, which I think speaks a little bit to feminism, since it's more representing the role of women instead of men. I noticed that, like, characters' races, Precious is black, Rita's Spanish, Rhonda is black, she's Jamaican, Jermaine is black, and Miss Rain is black. And then it said Joanne is beige, which not exactly sure what race that is, but that's what they labeled her, that's what they characterized her as. And so I just started looking at, like, these are all different types of identities, and they're all women that are fighting for a better life, or they're working towards a better life. And I started to think about, like, what does this mean? What does this affect? What does this change for the reader? And kind of made me question, like, are these women feminists? Like, and it goes back to the idea of, like, what makes a woman a feminist? Do they have to label as a feminist? Do they have to do acts to make them a type of feminist? So that got a little bit blurred. And I think, like, what I kind of came to a conclusion is that the book and the characters seem to expand or blur the idea of racial feminism, because you have all these women, and especially women like Precious and Miss Rain, I would say, are the most prevalent feminists in the book, but all of these women have different identities and different experiences, and they're still fighting towards making their lives better and doing better. So you have people that are low class, you have people that are illiterate, you have people that have been raped, you have people that have AIDS, you have lesbians in the book, you have a lesbian teacher in the book, and that just kind of shows or represents that there can be more than one type of racial feminist. It's not just this one line, and I think this book, like, intentionally or not, shows that there's all these different types of people and all these different types of identities, and they can all be feminists in a way, or they can all represent a type of feminism or a movement of feminism. It doesn't just have to be this one type of person, like a white woman who's Christian and middle class. It can be all these women. It can be Precious, who is 18 and uneducated and had been raped by her father and still had 2 children by her father, and she still can be a type of racial feminist who fights for a better life for herself and others by helping herself. So that is kind of like the process and the claim that I got through analyzing the text, and some evidence that I found that was textual evidence. I think that the women having their identities and everything that I just said is a type of evidence, although it's not textual, it is evidence for my claim. Also, that another type of evidence that's not textual is that these women are just fighting marginalization on their own just by deciding to get an education and pursuing it. So that's another type of like feminism in itself. So one textual evidence, piece of textual evidence that I found is on page 70 when Mrs. Rain is talking to Precious, and she says, "I think a beautiful girl like you should get a chance to get an education. You should not drop out of school." So this is a woman telling another woman to, instead of staying home and taking care of her child or giving her child up for, or yeah, instead of staying home and take care of her child, she should go to school and she should better herself and she should get an education. And that's like a very rational, or like a very like out there thought compared to like conventional ways of thinking. So type of an act of feminism that Miss Rain is making. And then another textual evidence that I found, another piece, there's a part on page 95 when Germaine is talking about Precious is talking about what Germaine wrote in her book. And it says, Germaine stayed on, saying she stayed with schooling, and she called what she is a sexual preference. She says she shouldn't be judged for that. So this is just like showing how like this is another type of feminism who has this belief about themselves, or they have this identity as a lesbian, and that's okay, and that's another radical thought. And so that's all I have for today. Thank you.